Today we're going to cover ethics in the law. Screen machine gone. I can't see my own slides. What's up? Oh, all right, whatever. I'll just look up. So, first of all, some quick announcements. We're doing an ACM cleanup party. We have 2 DDR pads that they're going to give us a permanent area to keep them in. If we clean up, we're going to do 2 of those. It was going to be, well, it's just right after this meeting. So we just need to clean up ACM, the ACM rooms, and then we can have our own space to hang out and do stuff in the back room, and also do DDR, which is cool. Cool, so the meeting flag is SIGPwny. I am not a lawyer. Not is in all caps. Go to ctf.sigpwny.com and enter that for your points. Say thank you to coming to this meeting or for watching the video. So in terms of me, I've taught the ethics class at like CS 210 and 211 at this school for 2 semesters now. So I'm a little familiar with this stuff. So, all right, did everyone who wants that flag get it? Awesome. So, ethics is a study of what to do and what not to do. On top of that, it is a study of what is good and what is not good. So, tech people and CS people can be assholes sometimes and do really awful things, and that's not great. Examples of this are Theranos, which was a kind of like a Ponzi scheme that wasn't necessarily going to be a Ponzi scheme, but little ethical missteps and misdeeds turned it into one of the largest corporate fraud schemes that has ever happened, ever. Facebook had a data leak they were selling their data to a bunch of different companies, namely Cambridge Analytica, which was a political data broker and a political analyst organization, which it can be argued swung the 2016 election. And lastly, we've got the NSA spying on basically every single citizen of the United States of America, as revealed by Edward Snowden in 2013, as permitted and as propagated by the Patriot Act and previous acts. So people in tech have ethical hands in this because the tools that are used to allow this, the database analytics tools, the algorithms that exist are all written by engineers, and they are all written by educated engineers like you who go to good schools and then end up doing really unethical things, which is not good. So we're going to talk about moral frameworks. There are 3 key ethical models that we talk about, first of all, in this class, in 210, which is the ethics class here. And also just in general, there's 3 really well-known ethical models. The first one is, we've got an example. So you're a switch operator on a trolley. This is the trolley problem. It's a really famous ethical problem. You're a switch operator on a trolley going down a track, and it is going towards 5 people. You have the ability to pull the switch, but by pulling that switch, you switch the track, and instead of killing 5 people, you kill 1 person. So how you operate depends on what framework you abide by. So the first framework that we're going to talk about is utilitarianism, or consequence-based ethics. So the idea behind consequence-based ethics is that actions are guided by what the outcome is. So if the outcome promotes the most social good or utility, that is the action that you should take, regardless of your intent or regardless of the in-between actions. If whatever happens at the end is good, then the action is good. So the outcome is ultimately what matters. So how would a utilitarian behave in this scenario? Would they flip the switch and kill the 1 person, or would they not flip the switch and kill 5 people? They'd flip it? Why would they flip it?
Because if you're doing it by outcome, then the 1 person dies, which is 5 people die.
Okay.
They don't care that the bullet is spent.
Yep. So it's just we're killing 1 person. So yeah, that's utilitarian ethics. It it makes sense. A lot of people, when it's, their freshmen, sophomores, or younger people, are like, oh, I want to be a utilitarian. I want to cause the most good possible. But there's flaws in every single framework, and there's clearly flaws in this framework. Can people think about some of those? Okay, does anyone have any ideas for flaws within utilitarianism? Yes. What if that one person's your mom? Or what if those 5 people are on death row and that one person is a Nobel laureate in medicine? So yeah, there's, utilitarians could factor that in, but it kind of starts to fall apart when you actually have human life involved. So the doctors had this thing that's been notoriously named a kill book, which is basically in times of stuff like, there's the hospital's overflowing and you need to figure out like where you allocate your resources. They have a book that determines the ethics of like who's going to live and who's going to die. If we're operating based on a kill book like this, and you're trying to save as many people as possible, there's a good chance that you're helping people that may be super, might be an old person who's gonna like die next week of like old age. It might be this person, it might be that person. It doesn't necessarily hold up when it's just save as many people as possible. There's a bunch of other interesting nuances to utilitarianism as well. So deontology, duty-based. So this guy named Kant, if you've watched The Good Place, they talk about Kant a lot for some reason. So duty-based ethics, Kant invented it with his categorical imperative. The whole idea is that there's kind of 3 parts to it. So all moral agents, which are like people and entities, not companies and stuff or like ideas, it's mostly just people. So all moral agents have a duty to uphold a universal set of rules to each other. So, don't be an asshole. I don't want to be an asshole to you. You don't want to be an asshole to me. And then the second part here, it's weirdly 3 disconnected parts. I don't totally understand why they all went together. But intent is really what matters. If an action's morality, regardless of the outcome, if the intent of the action is to uphold those duties, it's honorable. And then and it's moral. Then the third one is a little weird. It's moral agents should not use other moral agents as a means to an end, which is a little strange because it doesn't necessarily fit with the previous 2 things. So what would a deontologist or a duty-based ethicist do in this situation? If we've got the trolley problem, would they flip the switch or not? I see at least 2 people who are in this class right now in the room. Okay. So it depends, because this is when ethics starts to get really interesting for me, at least, and it also starts to get really murky, because a deontologist has a duty to not kill people. Problem there is we've got this one person. So we could save these 5 people, but you would be using this one person as a means to an end to save those 5 people. But at the same time, your intent is to save people. So by saving those 5 people, as you can see, this gets murky. And it gets even murkier when we go to the third one, which is character-based ethics, which was invented by a bunch of Greek people from like forever ago. So the whole idea behind character-based ethics is that moral agents, the character and the character of your actions are ultimately what matters within morality. So if your actions uphold good morals or good virtues, such as honesty, dignity, that type of stuff, the action is ethical. That's really, really gray, because what defines dignity? It's relative based on culture. So like, for example, in old age Hinduism and some modern areas of India, there's something called honor killings, where if someone does something that's dishonorable, you can literally like kill that person to like maintain the honor of your family. That's how I understand it. I'm probably wrong. But what defines dishonor? It's it's very relative based on culture. Does wearing a funny hat define dishonor? Does, like, who knows? So it's really interesting how like relative this stuff is and how gray it can get. So why am I telling you all about this, and why does this apply to technology and hacking? So this applies in tech. Here's the actual trolley problem with a self-driving car in a failure state, where we have 3 people in the car or 3 people in the street. Do we kill? And the car has to make that decision. There is code that exists in like Tesla's cars and stuff like that that's making decisions like these. So, is it going to kill the drivers, or is it going to kill the people crossing the street? Like, that is a real, like, your hospital gets knocked out by ransomware. Real thing that happens. Like, people have died because of this. Hospital gets knocked out from ransomware. WannaCry killed 3 people. Hospital gets knocked out. You have no power. You have no access to patient charts. You have no access to be able to provide care to people. How do you do that? What backups do you have? How do you ethically provide care to people? Do you pay the ransom? Do you, lots of questions there. Yeah, so, what would the car do in this situation? We've got running people versus walking people. I don't know what the difference is in this one, but yeah. So how does this apply to security? There's a lot of different ways in which this will apply to security, and like ethics themselves will apply to security. We're going to talk about all of these things except for social engineering attacks, but incident response is essentially how do you respond to a cyber attack, and how can you do so ethically and like inform the public ethically about what's going on. Then there's vulnerability research and reporting. If you want to help protect people, or you want to just like find bugs and stuff, how do you do so ethically? We're going to talk about that. And then stuff like social engineering attacks. If you are going to, is it ethical to be doing that even against people like, so I have, just for an example, I have called banks for my job, and I have talked to these people pretending to be someone else to try and get information from this bank. I've done so successfully. Is that unethical? I was told to do that. I was paid to do that. The person later finds out that that was a test. Like, I was told to do that. I was paid to do that. They find out later it's a test. Ultimately, they have to go to like some training or something like that. But when I was doing it, they had no idea I was doing it. Is that unethical? I don't know. That's what we're talking about. So security ethics, the whole idea behind actual security ethics is mitigating risk. A risk is essentially the probability that something bad, like it's an expectation of loss expressed as a probability. So if you have something that's high risk, there's a good chance that it will be lost. Assets are things that we want to protect. This is, for people that have never done security before. So if we have an asset and it has a high risk, there's a good chance that it'll be attacked. There's a good chance that it'll be lost. There's a bunch of different like hacker ethical frameworks that exist. This is a really famous one by a guy named Stephen Levy. Access to computers should be unlimited. All information should be free. Mistrust authority. Hackers should be judged by their skill. You can create art and beauty on a computer, and computers can change your life for the better. So that's interesting. What are some, some of these things are good. What are some problematic things that exist in this hacker ethical framework? Just raise your hand. There's no challenges for this meeting. It's an open discussion. Sure. I'd say a healthy amount of mistrust is, do that in moderation.
Access to computers should be unlimited. For example, if the computer we have access to has data, people, or demographic information.
Absolutely. That's a huge issue. Let's expand on that. There was a Catholic newspaper called The Pillar, which bought location data from a data broker, which it's in a sense a computer. They bought this from this data broker who had bought the data from another data broker who bought the data from Grindr. Grindr is a gay dating application. this Catholic newspaper then used that data to out a priest and get him removed from the church by using like location data to pin the use of that app to a specific location. This is a real thing that happened. There's an assignment about it. So should access to computers be unlimited if someone can go do something like that? And here's another question. Who's at fault there? Is it the engineers at Grindr for selling the data to the first people? What about the first set of people for collaborating it with other stuff and sending it to the second set of people? There's so many steps along the way that it really gets gray to who's actually at fault. And as engineers, we need to be aware of this, and we need to be able to create technological solutions to fix these potential ethical nightmares. What else is problematic up here? I've got one. We've got hackers should be judged by their skill. That's not necessarily super great. If we look at SIGPwny in 2017, we had the mentality of get good or get out. That was not great. That was not a conductive environment for learning and being excellent together. So Ian, the former president, changed that. Wow, former now. So yeah, he changed that, and we got a lot better and a lot bigger. But there's still good things here. Here's a fun one. If all information's free, who wants to write their credit card number on the board? Anybody? So then another thing, activities in all activities in cyberspace are virtual. That may have held in like the 80s when computers were a thing for academics, but who buys things online? Who buys things on Amazon? Who does their banking online? You should all raise your hands. You have a bank account? Oh my God. Okay. Thank you. Who has Venmo? Okay. Not my roommate. All right. So as you can see, there's a lot of different problems with almost every single ethical framework. You can pick most of them apart using other ethical frameworks. There's no one thing that's right, and that's why it's so interesting. So now let's actually start talking about cybersecurity stuff. With hacker hats, there's 3 common types of hats. There's like a bunch of other stuff, and if you hear anything like a blue hat or a red hat or something like that, someone is talking out their ass and you shouldn't trust them. There are 3 common kinds of hats within cybersecurity space. There is a white hat. Where'd it go? Uh-oh. A white hat who hacks for the purpose of protecting others. You do research into something and then you safely patch it. You do research solely for the purpose of making things better and being a good member of society. That is what I want all of you guys to be, hopefully. Black hat is using cybersecurity for malicious intent, essentially going sicko mode and doing things for profit or doing things just because you want to watch the world burn. Not super great, not super poggers. I think that black hat hackers are not good. The term there, if you're a black hat hacker, you're also kind of approaching on what's called a cyber criminal. I like to differentiate between hackers and cyber criminals because hackers do cool stuff and cyber criminals usually take stuff that hackers develop and use it to like defraud the elderly, which is bad. So then lastly, gray hat, which, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, maybe a little sus what you're doing, good by day, bad by night. That's what gray hat hackers are. So a little bit of both. So if you're doing ethical security research, the common standard that you should abide to, and this is what all of you should abide to if you're doing actual vulnerability research, is that you should hack systems with explicit permission, you should hack systems with expertise, and you should hack systems with proper documentation. So can anyone tell me what those 3 things mean and why they might be important? There is no right answer. Yes.
Well, you need to be allowed to actually do whatever you're about to do.
Definitely.
And if you're using expertise, you should probably be knowledgeable on whatever you're about to do.
Absolutely. You shouldn't be going in recklessly, like, yeah.
And then proper documentation, you should make sure that whatever you are doing, you're making sure is known to whoever you're doing to.
Yep. If you find something, you want to make sure that it can be recreated and all of that. So yeah, that was a really good explanation. You want explicit permission. There are times when you might not necessarily have that. If you're poking around at stuff, I've poked around at APIs and I have found things that have been very interesting. I could join your Jackbox game before you could start it. So, like that type of stuff. I have found that, and I did not necessarily have explicit permission to do that. But I was operating with expertise, proper documentation, and non-intent to harm, which is kind of like the fourth thing on here. I was operating with the purpose of, I found this thing, I'm going to report this thing and have them patch this thing, which they did. You can no longer do what I did because I reported it to them, which is cool. So, vulnerability reporting. That brings us to our next topic. Vulnerability disclosure. There's 3 ways to do this that are the most common. There is non-disclosure. You keep the vulnerability secret. You can sell it secretly to like a company or to a government if it's juicy enough. You could use it for your own gain. So, if you find a bug that allows you to turn on someone's microphone remotely, you could use that for your own gain to be a creep. Not super duper ethical. But there may be reasons to keep something secret. What if you find a crazy, crazy vulnerability in like every single computer on Earth, but it's really hard to execute, and it'll probably never be executed ever, but it's also probably impossible to patch? What do you do about that? Do you tell people that, hey, like there's this massive bug that exists that could ruin the world, that could cause panic? So that brings us to our third thing, which we'll talk about in a second. The second way to do this is the whole opposite of that, which is called full disclosure, where you find a bug and you just drop it. It just goes public. You tweet your vulnerability, and here it is. Go do with it what you will. If you want to do that ethically, the only way to do that ethically is to make sure people can protect themselves from it. So it's, hey, I'm dropping this vulnerability. Here's the patch. This happens a lot within like open source software where people will just like, oh, I found a bug in this thing. Here's the CVE associated with it. Here's the patch script. Go run this on your servers and you'll be safe from this bug that I found, which is cool. It's still not the best because,
So if you're gonna do it,
Sure. Zoom out.
Zoom to the same peak. Got it.
Zoom.
Cool. So if you're disclosing a vulnerability privately to the company, you gotta be careful, because if it's a shitty company, they could try and sue you for trying to break into their systems, or even worse, they can try and slap you with some of the laws that we're going to talk about in a minute. So you can talk to, the whole idea is that you're talking to a vendor, agree on a deadline for full disclosure. It's usually 90 days. You keep talking while you're doing that. So it's, oh, like, have you patched it yet? Have you thought about this edge case? Have you, have you done this? Have you done that? And you keep that communication open. And then when it's patched or after the deadline, whichever happens first, you fully disclose the vulnerability. So you drop it on Twitter or you get your CVE for it, stuff like that. There's some really famous examples of this. Frag attack. Yeah, what's a CVE? So a CVE, I think common vulnerabilities and exposures. It's like a public registry of vulnerabilities. A company called MITRE maintains a list of like, hey, here's all the vulnerabilities that are like well known, and here's the severity of those vulnerabilities. There's a lot. Who has a CVE in this room? Raise your hand. 1, 2. So it's like if you find a 0-day in a system and you share it with MITRE, they will assign you a CVE, and then it's a way for companies to just have this list of like, oh, I have that system. There's a CVE for that system. I got to go update it. So it's like a big registrar of vulnerabilities. So it's also like something that toxic security people use as like a metric for like, are you good or not? Where it's like, oh, do you have a CVE yet? If not, you're not a real tester, which is like stupid. So yeah. Then there's bug bounties, which is a way to have explicit permission to access to tested stuff, where companies will set up a bug bounty where if you find a vulnerability, they'll pay you. Examples of this are HackerOne, Pwn, which is like a tournament that we tried doing for several years and never did. And then there's like company specific bug bounties. So if you're doing this, they usually have like a scoping list where it's, hey, here's the stuff you can try to attack, here's the stuff that you shouldn't try to attack. So that's like, like try and like Apple has a bug bounty where like, you can get a attack where you can find a bug that's you send someone a text and then it takes over their whole phone. It's called a 0-click vulnerability. All you got to do is just send a text. That's like $2 million. So like Apple will write you a check for $2 million. That's pretty cool. You know who else would write you a check for way more than $2 million? If you found a 0-click vulnerability on iPhone? Arabia, North Korea, Russia, the United States government. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole industry called vulnerability research dedicated to finding bugs that then get sold to the governments and the nation states, which is, I don't know. How do you guys feel about that ethically? So, I have opinions on it. I'm happy to speak about it after the recording's over. Cool. So some other ethical issues. I'll just bring them up quickly. If anyone wants me to expand on them, I am more than happy to. Incident response and relevant stuff like that. Incident response is essentially what happens when you get attacked from a cyber attack. So when should information about the attack be shared? Who should it be shared to? Do you need to talk to the government? Do you need to talk to do you need to talk to the public? Equifax knew that they had a data breach for 4 months, and like they are a credit reporting agency. That has, that's everything. That's enough information to steal your identity. Equifax knew they had I think it was Equifax, knew that they had a breach for months before they publicized, which is just like, that's bad. That's bad. So this is important. Should intruders be kicked out first, or should the systems get back up? So should you try and take the systems that were hacked and repair them, or should you try and get the actual intruder out right away? That depends on what the system is and what you're going to do then. And then attribution and hackback kind of go together pretty tightly. Attribution is, can we really be sure it was person or entity or nation state who committed the attack? Because information is really easily falsifiable. If I'm going to send attacks to a server, I can change who sent the attacks. I can change the metadata of the actual packet and change who was attacking. So like I can change all that data and figure out, like, make the person think that it was coming from a different place. And that is really bad because there's something called hackback. So hackback is the idea or the philosophy of, if an organization is under attack, like a company or a person, is it ethical to respond in kind? Can you hack someone back if they are attacking? Interestingly, you would think, like, no, you cannot just defend yourself as illegal. But the CFAA had an amendment to it called the ACDCA, which is the Active Cyber Defense Certainty Act, which means hey, if you're really sure that this, this is a group that is hacking you, like you have high confidence of attribution, then you can hack them back. Which is, why could that be a problem? Yeah.
Is that just the government can have you guys?
No, that's not just the government.
Can't NVIDIA do this?
So why is this a problem? Yeah.
No real like definition of certainty, like.
Yeah.
It's just kind of.
So let's think like adversaries here. Let's come up with an adversarial example for how this can be used. Yeah.
I have a question, like, why would you want to hack them back in the first place, other than just to like give them like an FU? Because
To stop.
to stop.
So say that someone tried to hit me with DDoS, right? And I reflect all their stuff directly back.
Oh,
That stop, then they're getting traffic, which is stopping them from sending stuff to me, stopping their attack.
Yeah, also, I think in the NVIDIA case, where they stole their NVIDIA's data, NVIDIA wanted to try to hack them back to delete the data that they stole, or to like eliminate that instead of the thing to hack back.
Yeah, get your data back. Get your data back, delete your data before it gets publicized. There's reasons that companies and people would want to hack back. There's plenty of reasons, and there's plenty of good reasons too. But let's think like adversaries here. How could we abuse this? Fake a hack. You can fake a hack. How could you do that? Somebody else.
You hack Microsoft, and then from Microsoft, you hack Google, and then Google's mad at Microsoft.
So you hack into Microsoft. And then once you're inside Microsoft, you hack Google. And it looks like it's coming from Microsoft. So then suddenly they're all attacking each other. Yeah. So hackback is civil war. Yeah. So hackback is like really, is like, say we had unlimited. Like, all right, this person attacked me, I'm gonna go attack them back. Like say this, this is Cyberpunk 2077, and we've got like companies are just going to war with each other by hack. And I want to start a problem between Google 2077 and Meta 2077. How do I do that? I do exactly what Nate said. I send packets to Meta 2077 pretending to be Google 2077. And then Meta 2077 hacks back, and you gotta, the hackback cycle continues, and you just get a war, which is not good. Now we're going to talk about the other big part of this, which is the law. So please don't go to jail. I'm not a lawyer. I can't, this is not actual legal advice. I'm a 22-year-old teacher's assistant for an ethics class. So this is not legal advice. Don't think that me saying you can or can't do something is the final legal say for it. Crimes. There's a lot of crime that exists. There's different types. There's misdemeanors versus felonies versus capital crimes. If you want a quick explainer on that, misdemeanors less than a year in prison, felony is greater than a year in prison, capital crime means life or death, like life in prison or death. So that's that. There's federal crimes versus state crimes. So the US is set up in a pretty unique way from most other countries, where we have 50 little mini governments, and those little mini governments have their own laws that are different from the federal law. So you can do something in a state that, like, look at weed. You can go to, I can go to Texas right now with weed and smoke it and go to jail for 15 years. I could walk down the street right next to Cam's and Papa John's and go buy weed right now and like smoke it on the street and like get a fine. So there's, depending on what state you're in, it's interesting. If I took that weed and then drove it across state lines, suddenly I violated the federal law. So if there's a ton of different crimes that you can commit. Everyone has probably committed a crime today because it's a really big. There's a lot of crimes, and a lot of them are also pretty silly and really easy to break. So, like, who shares a Netflix password? Actually, don't raise your hands. If you share a Netflix password with someone, right? Like, if you share a Netflix password with someone who's outside of your family, is technically that might be a crime. Like is it a crime? We don't know. This is like ongoing litigation. It's, you know, it's wacky goofy. If you jaywalk, that's a crime in some states. If you like walk backwards while holding a donut in Nashville, Tennessee, like that's a crime. So yeah, it's weird. And then there's also a whole thing called civil court, which is the other part of crimes in the United States, where you're getting sued. And if you do something, criminal court and civil court are different. So you could do something bad and get charged for a crime, and then the people who did some, like the victims of that act, can also sue you for damages. So you can go to civil court and criminal court for the exact same thing. Civil court's different because it's not necessarily guilty without reason, like guilty without a doubt. It's, is there more than 50% chance that you're in the wrong? So, and just like there's no civil court by jury. It's a judge deciding what the deal is. So there's two elements that make something a crime. There is a specific state of mind or intent, which is basically either I have the intent to commit a crime, or I am in that state of mind in which I might commit crimes and I don't care. So example there is right here. Awesome, cool. So intent, mens rea is the requisite guilty state of mind. If I went up to Assam right now and punched him in the face, and I wanted to punch him in the face, and I told all of you, I'm gonna go punch Assam in the face because I want to do that. I sound pretty worried right now. That is the intent. That is the intent to do crime. Okay. So I have the intent to go commit crime, and I'm going to go do a crime. I lose the ability to say that, oh, I didn't have intent. You can actually, a big thing with criminal trials is, oh, my client had no idea, my client did not intend to break the law. How could that be important if we're doing computer crimes? If we're looking at computer crimes? Think about that while I tell you about computer crime. So then the other thing is intent. So there's specific versus general intent versus negligence. The specific intent is I want to punch Hassan in the face. General intent is I want to punch someone in the face. I want to do crime. And then negligence is I'm going to just start swinging. If I hit someone in the face, I don't care. So it's, this is really interesting. If you're interested in this stuff, there's a whole class dedicated to it, CS498 Law and Policy. Take it and turn it into a permanent class, because that would be really, really cool. It covers computer law. Ryan Cunningham teaches it. It's awesome. So some intent definitions under the law. These are really cool because you hear a lot about reckless driving and stuff like that. So let's talk about what they all mean. Purposefully, you hope for that specific outcome to happen, and you try to make it happen. I hoped to punch Hassan in the face, and I tried to punch him in the face. Knowingly, I knew the outcome was almost certain. I didn't necessarily intend or want it to happen, but I knew it would happen. I threw a punch in Hassan's direction. I didn't necessarily want to punch him in the face, but I knew that by throwing a punch in his direction, I'm sorry. You were just right here. I was I need an example. So it's I didn't necessarily want to punch him in the face, but by throwing a punch directly at him, I knew it was going to happen. Recklessly, you consciously ignored unjustifiable risks that you knew were risks. Driving down Green Street at 70 miles an hour is obviously a risk because there's pedestrians and bikers and other cars and stuff. But I ignored that and just last night at 2:37 a.m. drove down. But if you were to do that, it's recklessly, and you lose that defense of oh, I didn't mean to do this, because you clearly would have known these risks and you ignored them. And then negligently, this is an interesting one because there's a lot of defense here if there's accidental death or something like that. You should have been aware of the risk, but you were not. So what defines should have been aware, yada 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 yada. It's really interesting, and it's very case by case. So crimes, but not really, but also yes, but kind of. So these are like pseudo crimes. Solicitation means asking. Facilitation means assisting. Conspiracy means planning, and attempt means trying. So facilitation in punching Hassam in the face. Hustling, if you held Hassam down, and then I punched Hassam in the face, that's facilitation. Solicitation, this doesn't really, but like asking if I can punch Hassam in the face, that's weird because then Hassam is giving me consent, and but like solicitation is like asking someone for drugs. If I ask you for drugs, or if I ask you for your social security number with the intent to go make a big bank account, that is solicitation, and that's not legal. Conspiracy is interesting because you are planning to do that. So if me, Hussein, and Nathan all created the cult of punching Hassam in the face, and we said, okay, I'm going to go punch Hassam in the face, that's not necessarily conspiracy, because you need it's an agreement by 2 or more people commit a specific crime, and it has to be coupled with an overt act towards omission of the crime. So a better example there is arson. So if we've got the overt act doesn't have to be illegal. If I want to go burn down the Siebel Center for Computer Science, and I agree with all of you in this room that we want to go burn down the Siebel Center for Computer Science, right? And then we're all like full send, we're all in on this, okay? And then one of us goes and buys gasoline with the intent of burning down the Siebel Center. It's not necessarily illegal to buy gasoline, but because we all had this intent, we all had this agreement to commit the specific crime to burn down the Siebel Center, all of us get charged with conspiracy to commit arson. What? Shut up. For design. Sure. I don't know. I think. So types of crime. There's kind of 3 types of crime. There's blue collar crime, which I'm going to just use the stereotypical bad descriptions of these. Blue collar crime is committed by poor people. White collar crime is committed by rich people. And then the types of crime, which is neither, is crime that can be committed by anybody. The blue collar crime is stuff like theft, assault and battery. What's the difference between assault and battery? Can someone tell me?
So.
Really?
Assault could just be like not necessarily even like physical, it could just be forms of harassment.
Correct.
Also, like you can be charged for assault if you really plant something on someone. Whereas battery is like actually things.
So assault would be trying to punch Hassam in the face, whereas battery is like actually punching Hassam in the face. So sorry, Hassam. But you know, exactly the same thing there. Assault can have anything to do with harassment. It could be verbal. It could be planting something on somebody. It could be like touching someone in a way that's not comfortable. Yada yada yada. Mayhem. What's mayhem? This is an actual crime, and I'm going to ruin everyone's perception of mayhem. What? No.
No, okay.
Yeah. So everyone's like, oh, mayhem's like, you know, like disturbing the peace or something like that. No, mayhem is causing irreparable bodily harm to someone. Like if you chop off someone's arm, that's mayhem. Oh, yeah. That's not like, it's like you would think like, oh, mayhem like streaking or like punching random people in the face or like something like that. Like, no, mayhem is like breaking someone's arm so it never feels right, or paralyzes, or like causing irreparable bodily harm. Yeah, I love that one because it's like everyone thinks like, oh, I'm gonna go cause some mayhem. And it's like, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to cause mayhem. Like that is, you know, it's not good. Murder. Can anyone tell me the difference between first, second, and third degree murder? Someone other than Sam. We didn't even call it no.
Well, there's three methods, there's manslaughter and the one no one talks about.
Yeah.
What's the one no one talks about?
Second degree.
What's the second degree?
Like just murdering someone, but not like planning it out.
Yeah. So first degree murder is I planned to kill someone and I killed them. Second degree murder is what's called heat of passion murder. So it's like you found out someone, you found out some person was like like assaulting someone or cheating on you, and like in this heat of passion, like I'm so angry, you shot that person and killed them. That is second-degree murder, not first-degree murder, because you didn't plan to do it, but it happened. And the third-degree murder is manslaughter, where it's, oh, I was driving my car and I hit someone with my car. I'm sure you've heard of the hit or manslaughter. I coded this, I don't know, I was like 18. It's a shitpost bot where it just takes neural net images and adds Gaussian noise and then puts a random crime below them. And I made like thousands of these and I thought it was more funny. No, so that was a different thing. I've made several Twitter bots. This one could be adopted to that with that same framework really easily. Because like I could just take the code and take the images. It wouldn't be hard. So then white collar crime is the stuff that rich people do. So tax evasion, financial crimes, fraudulent businesses, like a pyramid and a Ponzi scheme. Can anyone describe what a pyramid scheme is? Really?
This is where like you sell to someone and the goal of that, whatever you sold, is to pretty much sell to other people.
Yes. So wrap it up. Wrong. So the whole idea is to like recruit other people into the business and you get money for doing that. And the money laundering, which is taking bad money from like drugs and stuff and turning it into good money. I'm gonna go a little because we started late, so I'm gonna go a little bit over. What? Oh, we do have to. You're right. Okay. So then there's types of crime that are neither fraud, CFAA stuff, yada yada yada. Okay. This is what I'm talking about with you all next. Will take like 3 minutes. It's really important because it is the law that we need to pay attention to. It's CFAA. This is not necessarily about what's right for the law, because this is a very dated law. This is about what the law is and how it works. So CFAA is the holy Bible of cybercrime law. It is 18 U.S. Code 1030, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. It was enacted in 1986, and it has been updated like twice since then, which is not great because 1986, what were computers doing? They were maybe in your banks, maybe in your schools, maybe the nerd person down the street had one. That was it. It protects what's called data at rest, which is stored data on a computer that's not actively moving between computers. There's a whole different law to protect data in transit. So if you're doing a man-in-the-middle attack, is that a CFAA violation, or is it a violation of a completely different law? It's also really arbitrary and super duper unclear, which is bad. We could spend a whole semester talking about this, so I'm gonna give a super brief summary. There's 7 laws in here. Getting classified information to injure the United States or aid a foreign power. Pretty clear why that is a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Accessing a computer without authorization and obtaining information. What defines access? What defines exceeding authorization? What defines without authorization? Like if there's no password on the system and I start getting information from it, is that exceeding authorization? We don't really know. Yeah. Question mark, question mark, question mark. I love the law. Unauthorized access of U.S. government computers. That pretty clear. Like you're not a government employee, you access the government computer, violation of Section 3. 4, another federal crime committed with unauthorized access to a computer. So you commit fraud, you commit theft, you steal money. Then the 5th one is unauthorized access plus damages. I don't know why the word damages is not there, but if you commit damages to a computer on top of your unauthorized access, that is a violation of 5. 6 is computer password trafficking. So if you've ever seen those big password dumps, that's a violation of 6. And then 7, which never shows up ever, is extortion plus any of the 1 through 6. Oh wait, I can do next slide. So yeah, I mean, it's really arbitrary. Like this is, the definitions have a little bit more legalese in them, but this is really it. Then there's a bunch of other laws that I don't have time to get into, but there's data in transit laws. So if a man in the middle, people charged under the CFAA, we don't really know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Wire fraud, mail fraud. So if you use bank wire transiting or you use telephones when you do this, it's wire fraud. Mail fraud, if you use the mail system to defraud people. There's 1,000 other pieces of law. I can the one thing I will say, never, ever, 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 ever find yourself anywhere near child sex abuse laws, ever in your life. If you know someone, go away, report them if you feel safe doing so. Never, ever, like the sentencing is like 20, 30, like 20, 30 to life. And it's just unbelievably gross. Never find yourself anywhere near it. Problems with the law, it's outdated. It doesn't cover ethical hacking. The Supreme Court literally won't make decisions on this. Van Buren v. United States got decided like last year, and it was the perfect example to kind of specify what defines without authorized access. And they just specifically said, like, oh, we're not going to deal with this right now. And they just didn't deal with it. Like, there was a little addendum at the bottom that said, this doesn't clarify what we mean by that in the CFAA. And it's also really arbitrary. What defines reasonable access? You know, Van Buren v. United States was like a whole thing about what defines reasonable access or what defines exceeding access. Okay, so from around a lawyer and then we're done. When in doubt, ask for permission before you do literally anything. Check what the company is. If you're not no criminal charges, does not necessarily equal that you won't get sued. So if the company's not going to try and arrest you for doing ethical hacking, that doesn't mean they're not going to try and sue you for doing ethical hacking. Shut up. If you get arrested, shut up, get a lawyer, invoke your Fifth Amendment rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you means at all times. So like if they hand you a glass, of water and they're just trying to make small talk with you, they'll use that against you. And then be educated, know your rights, know the law. This was the first step in education for computer law. Cool. Next meetings are crypto with Anakin. We're doing cryptography fundamentals. And I guess next Sunday is crypto 2, Anakin, which is more advanced cryptography. Does anyone have questions? This is a lot, I know. I just talk your head off for forever. Right. Go clean, please.
We'd love to have you.